The old world was you started a brand and you paid to get even a prayer of getting in. Now you build a $100 million business direct to consumer and you're going in with leverage. This is one big game of leverage.
You got your perspective.
I just want to be happy. Don't you want to be happy? Super excited that you're here. Excited for this fireside chat. We have plenty of seats, so everybody standing back, feel free to fill out. I apologize if I rush out on a whim. I gotta get to the airport, and I've learned my lesson on missing flights in this town in the past, so I'll be following D-Rock's call, and so let's get into it.
Yeah, nice, cool. My name's I'm a senior reporter, drawn and cover brand and digital, so excited to be here today to chat about pure digital brands. And I guess we can kick off with talking about Empathy Wines, which you recently launched, Gary. Can you give me a bit of insight into why you launched that? We're seeing big trends and brands moving into the D2C space and launching purely digital brands.
So for context, I wrote one of the first checks into Birchbox and a lot of early kind of 2011, 12 DTC movement, and obviously in the last 24 months, because of the sheer scale of the underpriced attention of Facebook and Instagram and the amount of capital that is available and the growth of Shopify and Amazon, all these macro trends have led to an enormous growth of direct-to-consumer brands. So I'm watching that, and obviously my great thesis of creating VaynerMedia was to buy nostalgic brands, so I haven't been highly motivated to do Gymshark or Fashion Nova or Hims. Like that's not where my passion lies, though I've been seeing all the growth. In parallel, I had two specific executives at VaynerMedia that were part of a team called the Office of the CEO. So in theory, a couple years ago, I realized how stretched I was, so I created a team to act like a chief of staff, and there was 4 of them. And after a year of it, it just wasn't as efficient. I moved to one chief of staff, which has been working much better, but I had these multiple executives that were super talented. 2 of them, John Troutman and Nate Schroeder, who are my partners in Empathy Wine, had been with me since they were interns in my wine business before VaynerMedia, and then came to Vayner. John had left and worked for a distributor even for a year and a half and came back. So as an entrepreneur, we're making this macro decision on the Vayner side. I'm sitting with these incredible human assets, which is really kind of the KPI of the whole Vayner thing to begin with. There's this incredible push of DTC, and as a third layer, I'm weirdly missing wine for the first time, right? When you do something for 20 years and it's like the only thing you're passionate about, you get burnt out. And so when I left Wine Library to do Vayner, it was so refreshing, and I was excited to not even think about wine. And then a couple years later, it was fun because I started looking at wine like a consumer. My whole life I'd go out to a restaurant, I'm like, oh, they're making a ton of money on this, and this wine sucks, and all that kind of stuff. And so that got fun, and it started becoming fun again. Nobody was doing anything super crazy. There were some wine clubs that were doing incredibly well, but there was no purebred direct-to-consumer brand at the kind of scale. So that's why it happened. We're off to an incredible start. We've sold almost $2 million worth of inventory in the first 6 months without spending any media dollars, all off organic against my brand. We did that as a strategy to see if we could glean insights at scale for my audience to make us deploy the media even in a better way, the A/B testing against Gary fans versus wine drinkers as a whole. And so the next year for Empathy is gonna be really exciting because I think we're really now gonna act like a brand more so than the leverage off a personal brand.
Really interesting you mentioned that, actually. I'm interested to find out more about the kind of media plan and what that looks like for Empathy Wine, because you launched it on Instagram. Is that the most important platform for business?
The funny part is I'm not sure, and we launched it everywhere, right? You might have saw it on Instagram, but we put on YouTube and podcast and Twitter and LinkedIn and email, and we're pretty excited to go as many platforms as possible. To bring as much value here, I think one thing for everybody to think about with direct-to-consumer brands is to understand, I set up earlier the phenomenon on the consumer side of why it's happening. There's a very important thing I said very quickly, and I'll say it again. There's so much capital in the world today that VCs have to deploy it. That's how they live. And one thing that everybody really needs to realize about some of these incredible brands that we all love on Instagram or pre-roll YouTube or wherever you see them is most of them are actually underwater. They're raising so much capital so they can play a game where their customer acquisition is $31, but their margin on that is 19, so they're 12 bucks underwater. Our clients at VaynerMedia, for example, or established businesses that are held accountable to Wall Street can't do that. And so there's some incredible things that are going on with these brands, but if tomorrow the global economy decides to start the process in the other direction, 98% of the brands that we think are crushing it will be out of business. Because they won't be able to raise the next round. They're too underwater. Their math doesn't work on customer acquisition and profitability, and it's game over. And so we need to have a little bit better of a conversation. We need to have more of a practical conversation around DTC's brands to realize many of the ones that we put on a pedestal. I always say to my friends, it doesn't take a hero to lose money every month. And I think we need to be thoughtful that a lot of these brands are not building actual brand. They're really CAC and LTV conversion sales machines that are arbitraging against influencers or Instagram, and they need to be very thoughtful about building brand right now, because when it hits the fan, it will be brand that will get them through the dark time.
What is the best way for DTC brands to build brand then? You know, we're seeing a lot of like out of home and traditional TV ads from these kind of pure digital players.
I think it's a huge mistake. And I think you're seeing it because they're wasting money and they don't care. And I think that the biggest delta is we literally, what's amazing to watch these brands go so heavy on traditional above the line creative is that the great case study of modern creative comes in the form of Dollar Shave Club. The Dollar Shave Club video is this generation's Just Do It or Where's the Beef. It really is an iconic piece of creative that birthed the billion-dollar brand. The number one mistake that the direct-to-consumer brands at scale are making right now is not creating long-form video on Facebook and YouTube to build brand equity. And that's how I see it. And I think there are a couple brands that are actually, for that matter. Purple Mattress. If you nerd on this stuff, you should go look at what Purple Mattress is doing as a company versus what Casper is doing as a company, right? One is very hardcore DTC and is growing and is the leader, Casper, but Purple is creating a lot of creative. The $180,000 production and creative execution risk of making a funny video, a video that makes you cry, a video that makes you think, if you hit that, your CAC and LTV numbers get really good real fast. Because now you're training on brand. And that's the ultimate goal.
And then in terms of platforms,
yes.
What does it mean for social media platforms, retailers? What does this shift mean?
Well, it means that the Facebooks of the world, the Googles of the world are getting more of their, I mean, it's crazy. You have two gals in middle of nowhere starting a direct-to-consumer peanut butter brand and 2 years later spending more money on Facebook and Instagram than does. Mm-hmm. Like, if you go talk to Facebook executives that run their business, they are getting way bigger budgets from companies you've never heard of. And that is probably my favorite thing that's kind of going on. Literally, when you look at the top spenders on these platforms, it will blow your mind. Literally a brand you've never heard of. And that's because one trades on sales data and another one trades on internal MMMs or reporting.
Coming back to your earlier point, is there danger in building your whole brand on one platform?
Yes.
What is the danger of that?
You become one-dimensional, and a one-dimensional fighter is vulnerable.
And what about retail?
And I'll instead of just like making a fun statement, let me add a little bit to that. Look, anytime you're looking for growth, you know, this is actually a fun way to create some clarity about how I think about the world. I don't hate traditional media. I think over a long period of time, it became overpriced. I actually love outdoor, for example. Outdoor gets seen, you know? Not everybody's looking at their phone every second, and if you really like, I love UI and UX in real life, so I like outdoor quite a bit. I just like to buy it when it's remnant and I can buy it for 1 month for $2,000 instead of the $24,000 they want when you buy it for 6 month contract. So to me, the danger of being one-dimensional is why would you want to be one-dimensional, right? You're gonna squeeze the crap out of one fruit and you've squeezed all the orange juice out of the orange, but there's a grapefruit right here. You should start and even if the grapefruit's small, there's still juice in there. And so to me, I think about overpriced and underpriced attention. And as real estate prices come down in a soft economy and more internet business, inevitably it's gonna turn and storefronts are gonna be a good buy. So there's a bunch of companies that are about to go out of business because they signed big leases 7 years ago, didn't factor in e-com, and they're underwater. They'll go. Demand for retail, everyone's a headline reader, like don't buy retail, it's the internet. So what will happen is demand will go down. So retail in 2 to 3 years, especially if the economy gets soft, is gonna be a deal for these brands that get walk-in traffic. I mean, still, everybody here bought something in a store recently. So, yeah, there's just no reason to be one-dimensional.
What do you think about these brands moving into physical retail spaces? Harry's in the UK is just on a big deal with Boots.
I'm into it. I think you expand your business, you've got the leverage as a DTC brand. You know, the old world was you started a brand and you paid to get even a prayer of getting in. Now you build a $100 million business direct to consumer and you're going in with leverage. This is one big game of leverage.
Well, I want to take some questions from the audience if there are any, before Gary goes to catch his flight. Just stick your hand up.
Ask a question. So your recent campaign with K-Swiss you brought out, I saw on social media.
Thank you.
It's incredible, by the way.
Thank you.
That's very much a branded piece by yourself, I imagine. Where do you see that going, you know, and where's this kind of fitting into your vision of building brands?
So, just to catch up everybody, this week we launched the 4th collaboration with K-Swiss, and what we decided to do this time was do an above, you know, I love eating my own dog food. So I'm yelling at everybody for not doing longer form brand videos to drive their business. And so I said, then I'll do it for this. So and then I said, what's underpriced attention? Influencers are underpriced. So I reached out to a huge slew of influencers who follow me and offered to pay them. And we made a very long form video at Vayner Productions. I was very uninvolved, obviously, besides sitting and answering questions, which they used some of it in the video, but very little me in comparison to everything else. We made a long form video that a bunch of influencers posted for awareness. And it was just a brand piece. It was just kind of more similar to the stuff I normally put out, but more production value. No different than the Dwayne Wade Budweiser piece we did or the Maxwell House piece we did. So, and the impact on sales was extraordinary. It drastically outperformed Clouds and Dirt, which was more sales, more of that approach. And so you can imagine, and here's the best part, back to not caring about outdoor radio or television. I didn't care if it was gonna fail because I know creative is the variable of success. But it worked extremely well.
There was a lot of emotion as well you put into it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I apologize for cutting you off. If you're gonna make content, you need people to feel something when it's done. Whether they laugh, they cry, they think, like, yeah, I mean, that was the most important. If the video sucked, we wouldn't have sold sneakers. You know, and so we went with a brand approach on digital because, like I said in some meetings today with some of the leaders, I believe that digital, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn is the place to build brand, not do lower funnel sales. I think that's the place to do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 minute videos because I think that's the place where people are consuming information. It's not super complicated. And once everybody wraps their head around it, it's so funny to see the creative landscape push against this because they put the emotion and the ideology of TVC on a pedestal. Meanwhile, every creative on earth would much rather have 2 minutes and 13 seconds to tell a story than 30, or at least the appropriate amount of time to tell the story versus being confined to a 30, a 15, or a 6.
You mentioned influencers there. What role do they have in this D2C world?
A huge role. Influencers by nature are creative and distribution media, all in the price of one, with word of mouth, affirmation, and co-signing. They're the great deal of our industry, yet there's enormous scrutiny around it because people like headline reading instead of being practitioners.
Cool. Does anyone have any more questions that they want to ask?
What's the best?
What's your name?
I'm Sam.
Sam.
And we start working, guys. Yes.
Thank you.
How do we keep track of like which channels are good value? Say at the moment outdoor might not be however you know what to.
It's a great question. We were just having this debate upstairs. Like, look, what you measure against is so imperative, right? You know, to me, if I'm a business, I'm trying to suffocate out of everything I do to prove to me that it's driving. So for example, if I'm a retailer, which I grew up one, so this one comes natural to me, I want to do branded outdoor with actually a product and offering, and not offer that product and offering anywhere else in the world, so that I've suffocated the variables to understand that that was the channel that drove the behavior in my 713 stores against a $49,000 production cost and a $637,000 outdoor media spend. And the fact that we don't do that over time made me realize how much the industry doesn't want to figure out the actual answers. You know, suffocating, having the actual intent. We do a lot of digital buying where we're doing 1 mile, 2 mile radius media spend against specific offer, and we can show that, you know, there's an uptick in foot traffic versus your baseline, and your average sale is higher than it was before because we clustered out other stores where they didn't do that. I mean, it's, you know, if you have true intent to prove the ROI, and you're lucky enough to have some sort of transaction of some sorts, or something to anchor to, even if it's a Nielsen rating on TV, which is their currency, or votes, or whatever it may be, you will get the answer. If it's simply brand health, then somebody's making a subjective call, no matter what report they use as gospel.
Any other questions? Anyone else? Yeah.
Empathy Wine, coming
Yes.
to the UK.
Yes.
When?
We just had this discussion with we're working on it. One thing that was very important to me is if this wine went into new markets, that market didn't pay an extra vig where it was just paying more than the American consumer, or to the best of my ability, because sometimes like we're going to Canada. Canada is a mafia. The whole country owns the whole ecosystem. You can only do so much. So we're looking at several options. I think I'd be surprised if we weren't here within the next 6 months. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. Sam.
Another Sam.
By the way, did you guys see Gary will be extinct in the UK by 2050?
Yeah.
You see that article?
Not since 1992.
There's not been a single kid named Gary in the UK since 1992. I'm gonna super focus on my brand in this region to inspire at least one transaction. Yeah, exactly. Real quick, and I apologize because this is gonna be value. I failed almost every class I took except history. And I never, ever, and I mean this, knew why until recently. Basically, the reason I end up being right about a lot of things is the conversation you and I just had. Everything repeats itself. It's pattern recognition. That's right, that's why these brands are in deep if they don't start building real brand. What they're doing that scares the out of me is I think they're wasting 85 to 90 cents on every dollar they spend on marketing doing old things with old reports, which is the only thing they can do, which is contemporary branding to build relevance, to offset the deep technology disadvantages they're sitting with.
So what would you do if you were in hotels?
Build brand. Because when this goes to voice, and I say, Alexa, book me a hotel, I better say, Alexa, book me a Marriott, or Marriott's gonna be upset. Alexa, book me a Four Seasons, or they're gonna be upset. Because when voice becomes the toll booth, not search, everyone's in deep. Because with search, at least you have a prayer of seeing another result. With voice, Amazon and Google pick. And then when Amazon and Google actually buy Starwood, people are very confused what's about to happen in the world. I think I'm less confused. And that's what I do, things that people make fun of and later revere. So I highly recommend, if you're capable of dealing with judgment and you have conviction, to do it. It always works out in the end.
Nice, I think that's a really nice place to end actually.
I agree, see ya. Have fun, I gotta run. I'm sure there's some people who wanna talk, but I'm legitimately gonna miss this. So have fun, thank you so much. Thanks for coming.